teaching her how to ride a bike, and we've had road trips where we've been in a truck, and I tell her, hey, if you go like this, the truckers will honk their horn. And Marcos hangs out the window, and he's like, get them. I love you, Marcos. I love you. I've been privileged. My name is Emily, and I've been privileged to work with Marcos for the last 8 years, and also work with Inez when she first got there. I've been at Homeboys for 8 years. So what it was like, I grew up in a very dysfunctional, verbal, physical, and mental abuse house. My story is similar to Inez's, to the point to where, like, that's all I knew. You know, I remember being a little girl and thinking that the stuff that was going on was normal. I remember being a little girl and being the human roach clip, where I would stand in the living room and someone would smoke a joint and then I would pass it to the next person, and everyone thought that was so cute. You know, I remember being a little girl and wanting my mom's attention, but them needing to be outside, because my dad every year my stepdad would grow these big old, huge marijuana plants, and every year they would have this big old party, and every year everyone would go to jail. And I remember in my head thinking, when I was a little girl, I used to look out the kitchen window and I would see people getting initiated into the gangs, and that's by getting jumped in. And I would watch, and they used to have these blue jackets, khaki jackets, with their name and the name of the neighborhood in the back. And I remember I wanted one as a young kid. And so when I remember when I rolled up to prison for the first time, although I was scared inside because I didn't know what was about to happen, I knew I had arrived, because that's all I knew that I ever had wanted. I had no dreams, I had no hopes as a young kid. You know, growing up, I was taught to be prejudiced against blacks and whites. You know, I remember one time being in this fight, and my mom and dad sold drugs all my life, so a lot of people knew who my parents were. And there's this girl, she was disrespectful, and she called my mom out of her name, and everyone was like, what are you gonna do, you know? I think I was like in the 5th grade or something, and I remember it was one of those meet after school things at 3 o'clock, you know? And so we go, and I remember the pressure of everyone looking at me, and I remember getting this there was a wood fence, and I remember pulling a piece of the wood fence off. And I remember inside of me this feeling of like, don't do it, and feeling sad. But I didn't know who that person was. It was weird. I could actually remember it when I think of it. Feeling torn inside. But I remember getting that stick and starting to beat this girl with it, although I didn't want to. But it's what I had to do, because that's who I was supposed to be. You know, I was supposed to be the big bad daughter of a big drug dealer, and no one was gonna disrespect her. Anyway, so, you know, also I remember stuff like sleeping in the living room on a huge pillow. All of us slept around it like little cats, and guns being shoved up my back, and my mom saying, whatever you do, don't move. And the doors getting kicked in, and cops all in the house, and not being afraid of the cops, but being afraid to move, because if I messed up, my mom was gonna beat me. You know, so that's all I knew. And I always knew not to disrespect her. You know, if I called her a name, it was 3 blocks down, never to her face. I never was a disrespectful child, as far as, you know, when I started getting high and stuff, I remember I would get beat, and I would just curl up in a ball and I would take the beating. But I never considered myself a disrespectful kid, because back then, you know, I'm 48 years old, you didn't do that kind of stuff. But I remember as my sisters grew up and stuff, they would fight with my mom. They would, you know, and I would trip out on that stuff, because, you know, I was the black sheep. I was the one that no one was supposed to be like. I was the mess up. You know, my mom sold drugs and my stepdad, they separated, and my mom sold drugs. And I remember there was a time when it was, stay home and help sell the drugs. And by this time, I was already doing drugs. 12 years old, I was already an addict. I was smoking PCP. I was doing things that I couldn't even imagine my 12-year-old granddaughter doing today. I would probably, I don't know what I would do if she did any of the things that I did at that age. And now, today, I think, like, who was allowing me to do this stuff, But, so my mom, they would set up shop, and my mom had 2 houses, I remember, and my sisters would sell drugs for my mom from one house, because my mom was busy living with her boyfriend at another house. And I used to say, like, I ain't gonna sell nobody's drugs. If I'm gonna sell anyone's drugs, I'm gonna sell my own, So I just wound up in my addiction, and I didn't understand how they seen that I was so bad when you're selling drugs. I'm just doing them, And so it was really my life was really confusing to me. Like, it was always, I tell people today, it's not what you tell your kids, it's what you show your kids. Because my mom used to tell me a lot of things, but I seen different. My mom always had high hopes for me. I was going to be a tramp, a whore, and a slut, and no one was ever going to want me. And by the age of 14, I became a whore, tramp, and a slut. And I was pregnant with my first child, and this is what I was supposed to be. And I accepted that. I got pregnant with my first kid when I was 14. I remember being so afraid. I didn't know nothing about sex. I learned by doing stuff. So here I am with a 14 years old pregnant, and I thought it was going to be the answer. It was going to get me away from this family, and I was going to create my own family. And don't you know, it's all going to be great. And I had my daughter. So I got to play house for a few months, I was with my mom, but my mom started taking over. And by the age of 15, I wound up getting introduced to methamphetamine. I wound up with my kid's dad. I met him when I was 12 years old, and got pregnant at 14. And I remember, we used to do coke, and we smoked a lot of weed and drank, ditching parties, all that type of stuff, But I remember him telling me, we're gonna do this new stuff, and we're only gonna do it for the weekend. I said, okay, And I remember doing it, and then going home and sleeping in my room with my daughter's crib, and I could see the rainbow bright curtains and all this stuff. And I remember looking over to my side and seeing my partner asleep. And I remember laying there, and a monster had been born. Because all I could think about was, how was I going to get more? From that moment on, it was over for me. Something had switched on for Emily. I felt very good. I felt sure of herself. I felt confident, and I wanted more. So from that point on, I hid it. Everyone would go to work or school or whatever, and I was a babysitter. So I would hide my addiction. I'm not really going into too much of my childhood, because I think, like you guys can imagine, it was a lot like Inez's, My real father was never in my life. He was always in prison. I hated him because I believed that he had picked heroin over me. I'm his only daughter, and so I couldn't stand him. I had a stepfather that raised me and was very loving, and when he would be home on the weekends, would take us to the park and to ride horses and stuff, but it was very confusing because when he would leave, that's when the nightmare would happen. So I would pray that somebody come over and keep this woman occupied so that way I don't get beat. I remember, I'm Mexican, but I don't speak Spanish. And my mom would say, I know the difference now, but I remember her saying, for some reason my mom would put dirty pans and oils in the backyard. She'd put water and soak them in the backyard instead of cleaning them. She'd be like, Emily, go outside and get the sartén. Well, I would bring the oil, And it was like, even though I knew the difference, it was automatic I was gonna do it wrong because I was so afraid that I got it wrong and I would get beat, So I can tell you a lot of stories like that, but I think you guys get the gist of it, right? So back to my addiction, I remember that monster being born when I was 15 years old and thinking of how I could just get more, And after I got introduced to methamphetamine, it just took me, I used methamphetamine for 27 years of my life. And it took me to all the places that I swore and that I was taught not to go. I went there and I went there willingly, So I had my daughter when I was 15 and like I said, I played house for a while and my partner got incarcerated. He ran over one of our enemies, because actually he was my first boyfriend before this, and so they were enemies, and we were from rival neighborhoods. And one day this guy came to the passenger side where I was sitting and almost struck me in the face with a crowbar, but my partner got away. So one day my partner's driving by himself and he sees this individual riding a bike and he runs him over. So he gets incarcerated for that. So, everyone's like, you guys need to get married. He's going away. And that's what we do. Your old man's getting married, your old man's going to prison, so you get married. And you be there for him. I was 17 years old. I needed permission to get married. And my mom had already said no one else was gonna want me. I already have a kid. Fuck, I gotta marry this guy. He's my homeboy. I have a kid from him. I'm used to it, no one's gonna want me. Gotta do it. I didn't want to do it. I was so high the day of my wedding on meth. I remember having, and they bought me this beautiful dress. I know you guys can't picture it now, but they bought me this beautiful dress with this veil, from New York, and I had this veil on, I remember, and I was kicking the chapel door, telling them, let me in, And so we got married, and I had a beautiful wedding. It was more of a backyard party, but inside. All the homies were there, and there was a good party out of it. That's it. So then he wound up locked up, and I wound up running around and doing my thing, and I wound up meeting some different type of people. I joke around because I've been everything. I've been a gangster, I've been a punk rock, I've been speed metal, and now I'm a lesbian who's working in recovery. Hey, but at the time I met these white boys, because meth really wasn't in the neighborhoods. In the neighborhoods back then in the 80s were a lot of people smoking rock, so I met these white boys, and I remember walking in this room and there was guns everywhere, knives on the walls, this crazy music, going, and I walk in, and before I walk in, this girl says, are you ready? And the guy did, are you ready for this? And I said, yeah. I was like, I'm ready for anything. They opened the door, and I had never seen anything like it, and I had never felt better. I walked into that room and I didn't leave for, I think, 2 years. I wound up getting pregnant there. Not literally, but in that group of people. And my partner gets out and now I'm pregnant. And he's like, and I'm like, well, wait, dude, I'm pregnant now. Like, I don't think it's a go no more, And he's like, no, I want to work things out. And you know, I didn't know who my kid's dad was, so I was like, it was convenient. You want to take it? All right, let's do this. Until the baby came, and then it was thrown in my face constantly, what I did. And then we started getting high, and then I started getting beat again. And it took one day, we were driving, and he hit me in the face. And my daughter at this time is about 4 years old. And I remember sitting in the middle of the floor crying. And she came up to me, 4 years old, and said, "Mommy, it's okay. Daddy will be sorry later." And something snapped in me. You know, I didn't have no recovery or nothing in me yet, but I'm so grateful that something snapped in me. Because, you know, I truly believe that the person that's standing here in front of you has always been here. I just didn't know how to channel her. And it's taken some help. But that person rose up and said, "No, this isn't okay. I'm showing my daughter that it's okay to get hit." So I walked in the room and I said, "Check this out, I'm leaving you." "Yeah, right." And I didn't know I was going, and I was scared, so I washed all the clothes all day, took all day, folded some clothes, and kind of quietly put things away, trying to think what I was going to do. And by the end of the day, I don't know why I did this. I always regret it, but I told my daughter, and we went in the room, and I said, "Mommy's leaving. Who do you want to stay with?" And she said, "Dad." And I left with my son, my bastard son, my addiction, and the clothes, and I left. And I didn't let nothing take me back. You weren't going to see my kid or anything. I didn't go back. But then happened a whole nother thing, you know, and I was single, young woman, with, you know, I went from being controlled from my mother to being controlled in this relationship at a very young age. And all of a sudden, you know, here I am free. It was party time. I started cruising Whittier Boulevard, and, you know, I had a job at, you guys are probably too young to remember, Cheap Auto Parts, you know, and I was just doing my thing, you know. I remember I was so careless. I remember one time I had my son, I was renting a room, and I was all high, and I remember I turned around and my son was turning blue and started having convulsions. And the only thing I could think of was, "Oh shit, where's my dope? Did he get it?" Before I called 911, I wanted to cover my back and look for the dope, you know, and I found the dopes, and I was like, "Oh my God," and I called 911, and they came and they got my son and me and took us to the hospital. What it was that I was so careless of a mother that I was always coming in and out late at night, going from this place to that place, leaving my kid, you know, that my kid was sick and I was making him sicker. And I was young and I didn't know. And I don't remember actually when I picked up my son from the hospital or what happened after that, because I was so into my addiction. I do remember thinking, well, he's safe and someone's watching him, and leaving. To this day, I cannot remember how I got my son back, but I wanted my son back when he got out of the hospital, but I can't remember how, because that's how much I was in my addiction. I got to a point too where I thought, you know what, I met this guy, and we were going to change our lives, and we were going to go to Oklahoma, and we were going to get clean. And so I wrote a note. I, Emily, leave my son Matthew with his dad Dean, because he had his name, because I'm going to Oklahoma to get clean and I'll be back when I'm done. And I left with the note on him. The dad wasn't home. And it wasn't even really his dad, but you know, I left. Got high all the way to Oklahoma, got there and said, shit, where the fuck am I? You know? There was no more dope. I was staying with these people that were really heavy into their tribe. They were Methodists, and they were really into the church. And next thing I knew, they slapped a skirt on me, and a dress, like the ground was closed, right? And I'm like, what's going on here? I did it for a little while, played house for a little while, and then one day they're like, you guys gotta get married. And I was like, oh, well, I'm already married. You know, and they're like, oh, she's a sinner, get her out of our house. They were very, very, you know, and I was like, my bag was at the door, ready to go, you know. The guy took me home, I remember, and I was like, you go stay with your family, I'm gonna be with mine and talk to you later. Shit. I took off, hid from that guy, I didn't want to go back. He wanted to put a white picket fence around me. I wasn't ready for that. Wound up in another relationship. That relationship took me to Las Vegas. Got clean again for a little while. Then the friends came to visit to see all the wonderful things that I had got being clean and sober. First, I was in the abusive relationship with this guy, and then I met another guy, and then I got clean. And I didn't realize he was an alcoholic, but to me, that's clean, you know. So I thought it was fun, you know. So come look at all the great stuff I got, everybody. And when they came with their dope, and it was over for me, you know. So next thing you know, I'm working in 7-Eleven graveyard selling dope and having the cops watch the store while I'm in the bathroom taking a hit. Because they were my friends. They come hang out in the store, you know, and I was very talkative and nice. Because I was all high. You know, I've been a chameleon and like, I'm good at disguising and adjusting. And so I did that in Las Vegas, and then went through a really bad breakup, and I wanted to go home, so I was renting a room. After that relationship messed up, I was renting a room, and I said I'll be back, and I came back to California, and I never went back. Whole apartment left there, because there was some good stuff in my neighborhood. If it was good, I'll stay. I don't care what I left behind, you know? So I stood, and I wound up getting high, and wound up pregnant again with my third child. Remember, I'm prejudiced. There was this African-American guy who used to always try to pursue me, and I was like, I don't do that. My addiction took me to a place where I was like, all right, you know? And I remember thinking to myself, I'm gonna get punished by God because I'm not supposed to do that. Sure enough, wound up pregnant and having this guy's kid. And you know, I never shared this story, I never shared my story like this before. I don't even know where it's coming from. But, so I wound up in another abusive relationship, and this guy said that he would give my baby his name because I didn't want to believe that my baby was gonna be half African American. Shh, everybody keep that a secret. We'll pretend. And I lived like that. And I got high during the whole pregnancy because, you know, I really wanted to have the baby come out. Because, shh, I'm prejudiced. The baby survived, she didn't come out. And when she came out, I remember saying, not is it a girl, is it a boy, is it how? I said, what color? And she was Mexican, and she was actually my most beautiful daughter. But months later, I remember all of a sudden the hair changing, you know, and the guy that I was with was very abusive and used to be me, and we just wanted to get high. So I remember taking that daughter and going to her real father's house, who's a big connect, and I remember just walking into the house where him and his wife lived, and putting my daughter down in front of him and saying, give me an 8-ball. You didn't have to say nothing else. So basically I was saying, you're a kid, give me dope. And he did. I remember getting beat down so bad in this relationship that I was going insane. I would have to steal, because I always was with these men that did nothing. I was always a hustler. I don't know what these guys did, but I was always going to jail because I had to steal our clothes, I had to steal for the baby, you know, all that. So once again, I get out of jail, my friend tells me, Emily, like, what are you doing? You know, like, man, I just got out of jail. Then, you know, Tyler's like, you know, he said, Emily, come to Riverside and I'll give you an apartment. I'm managing these apartments. So I went with this guy and my daughter. It got so bad in my addiction that I would literally walk around only looking down. I was looking in the yellow pages for an institution to somehow put myself in when he wasn't looking because I wanted to escape. I just wanted out of it. And I didn't know nothing about recovery, or I just knew that I was going insane. I didn't know, but it was rape, and he would beat me. And then he would get my child, and they would stand there and they would laugh, and he'd say, look at you, look at that. And in my head, I knew better, but in my head, I believed that she was laughing at me too. And she was only 1.5 years old. I was crazy. I finally got out of that relationship. He took me for a ride to my mom's house one day to go get my welfare check, and he left to go do something real fast, and I went to go cash the check, and I ran into a friend, and I took off, and I never came back, and I hid, and he would drive by, and he would yell my name, and I would hit the floor, because I swore he knew I was inside. And people would say, he doesn't know you're here. You couldn't tell me that, because there was so much trauma of the beating. Finally, I didn't go home long enough that he left. We're talking months. And I finally went back to my apartment, and I'm free again. Started selling drugs and partying and doing my thing. They got so bad in my selling drugs that the neighborhood I was living in, I remember they petitioned me out of their neighborhood because I had all the homies from Riverside hanging out at my house. My house was a spot. People would get out of prison and they would go to my house because they had to hear about it in the joint, you know? There's a thing called taxing, and I didn't want to pay my taxes because I'm from LA, you're from Riverside, I ain't paying you shit. So, kind of caused me a lot of problems, got ran out of my house, and I wound up homeless in Riverside, and they would say, go back to, excuse my language, but go back to Norwalk, because that's where I was from, Norwalk. They would say, go back to Norwalk, and I'd be like, I ain't going nowhere. So my pride kept me living in the streets and in abandoned basements with candles and, you know, going through laundry rooms to find blankets and clothes that I could find that belonged to other people to keep me warm. I remember having $20 and buying a little burrito for 99 cents because I need 19 to go get high, you know? I remember walking down the street and knocking at people's door and I'm saying, shh, it's Emily. I remember walking down the street and looking for 25 cents so I could buy a little Debbie because I was fucking hungry. And, you know, for whatever reason, I'm staring this me because I need to remember. Because, see, I have an addiction that likes to tell me lies. And it likes to tell me, remember when you had that big old car? Or remember when you had all those girls? Remember when you had this? And it likes to lie to me. It likes to glamorize and make me believe that it was fun. But then I get these moments where I get to remember the real stuff, like right now. And it was bad. It was so bad, my mom used to tell my sister, go look for your sister under the bridge over there in Riverside. I wasn't under a bridge, I'd been there. I almost pitched a tent. I wanted to pitch a tent, but I happened to go to this house and they had this empty, you know, the back of trucks that was parked on the side of the house. And I said, what's in there? And they said, it's empty, you know. I looked and it was just full of trash and I found me a home. I took everything out. There was no running water at this house, and I would carry buckets. I was all tweaked out, and I would bucket by bucket clean out this thing. I painted it. I put a rug in there. I found 4 rims, and I put them down there. My mom moved out the house, and of course she didn't take me with her. She happened to be living in Riverside, and I went and got the mattress, and I put it on the 4 rims, and I had me a spot. You know? And I didn't have to share my dope with no one because I had me my own spot. I didn't have to go to your spot to get high. And I had a ride. And that was okay for me. That kind of life was okay for me, you know? And I remember having those moments when I would wake up in that tin and it would be hot. Because at night it was cool. But when you would wake up, and I remember hitting reality and thinking, what the fuck am I doing here? How do I get here, you know? Finally, I got tired and I went home to Norwalk and I told my mom I'm tired. My mom's still selling heroin at the time, and So I stayed there for a little while. Now I didn't realize my mom was getting high on meth too. So she would send my sister to go pick up her dope, her meth, not her dope that she was selling, but her meth that she'd get high on. And I would tell my sister, hey, where's her shit at? She'd be, damn, it's up there. Then me and my other sister go get it, do some, and then we put it back, and then we get some more. You know, one time my mom finally came out and she says, gets her bag and it's empty. Well, I had some crumbs. And she opened it and she threw it on the floor. She goes, what are you guys gonna do now? You know? But she used to be fast to give me a sack of dope when I was burned out, when she needed to go to Chakawala or Ironwood to pass some balloons. She'd say, here's the 16th, wake up, and then take me to the joint. And we would put balloons under our mouths of heroin and we would sneak them in. She was always quick for that. But I was bad. I was no good. I was a dope fiend. So it was very confusing. Finally, one day, my mom got tired of my stuff, and she tells one of her runners, she's standing where I could see her, and he's standing in front, and he says, Mia, here's $400. Your mom says she doesn't care if you go get dope with it, or if you go ahead and buy some dope to sell, whatever you want to do, but you gotta leave the house. Here's $400. And I remember looking at that homeboy, and I could see my mom behind him, and I'm crying. And I said, I just need help. I don't want your money. I need help. So shortly after that, you know, my mom, she was the best that she could be. That's all she knew to be, you know. I don't hate her for it now. Still struggling, trying to fix it, but, you know. I wanted to turn myself in to go to prison for the first time. First time I went to prison, I actually turned myself in. And I got real drunk, and we took a trip to Riverside, and I went to the court, and I said, I'm here to turn myself in. They said, our computers are down, we can't do it. I said, ain't this about you know, right? So I'm walking out of the court, and thinking I'm getting in the car and go back home. My sister's over there talking to the cops. And I said, what about if I want to change my mind? The cops come and handcuff me, and I'm drunk, and I go to the county, and I go to prison. My mom was there for me. She was in the court, and she gave me some money, and I went off to prison. And that's when I had the experience when I had arrived, you know? I remember being in prison the first time after a year and standing outside smoking. This one could smoke. And I remember you guys go like this. I was awake. I had never been awake from the age of 12 years old. I was 28. I had never been sober. And I'm in prison, I realized, wait a minute, I'm a person, who am I? Like, how did I get here? You know, like it was a really weird experience. I like to say that I got it that time, but I didn't. I wound up in and out of prison a total of 4 times. Each time I went to prison, I would go to prison, and I would get out, and I would go to a drug program. I would learn some stuff, and then I would leave, and then I would relapse, of course, and I would go to prison. And that happened on and off 4 different times, because I'm one of those addicts that I don't know how to walk into a treatment center or ask anyone for help. The only help I can get is like as I pray, and then all of a sudden some handcuffs come and they put them on me, and then they lock me down, and my God gets me and he sits me down and he says, now wake up. And then the blessing is that they put me in these programs, and people come in like, you know, that I've never seen before, white people, and they're telling me about forgiveness and recovery, and I'm like, but in the process of them telling me stuff, it used to sound interesting. But I had to be hard, you know, but in my heart, I wanted to know what they were talking about. And I remember one day that they were talking about forgiveness, and I started realizing that father that Party mentioned that I hated, that I became everything like him. I became a dope fiend, in and out of prison, and left all my children exactly like him. And I thought, oh my God, I want my kids to forgive me one day. And I said, shit, I better forgive him first. I went in my room and I wrote a long old letter, It started all nice and neat because my dad was a pintero and you gotta do things respectfully. And then at the end it was all, with tears on it. Later I found out that my dad said that he never cried the way he cried that day. Because I told him how I got beat because I believed I was his child and just everything came out. And at the end I said, no disrespect, but in order to love you, I gotta let the hate go. So the last time I went to recovery, my dad used to be, every time I went to prison, he made it where he would call the prison once a week. He was in the feds, and I would get to know my dad that way, And I had these dreams and hopes that one day I was gonna see my dad. I hated him all my life, and now I finally became like him, and I understood where he was coming from, and I wanted to see this man. I'm in recovery. I get out of the prison and I go to this program, and I'm there for almost a year, and my dad dies in the federal penitentiary. And they let me leave for a week to go mourn, and I walked into the house, and the first thing I did was get drunk. Then when I came back to the program, first thing I did was snort some heroin. And I lay there, and my dad had told me, the only thing I'm worried about is you and your recovery. And I told him, I got this, don't worry. But after he died, I was high on his drug of choice, which really wasn't mine. And I'm laying there what am I doing? I wound up leaving that treatment center because I was there for a year. I graduated. I remember being in that treatment center and telling them, I'm in your fucking program dying, loaded, but I couldn't tell them myself. So I was trying to tell the counselor, look at me, but she didn't see it. And I'm like, I'm in your program dying, but I didn't know how to say help, So I leave the treatment center finally, and I move into a sober living. And I think I get this smart idea that I want to be a drug counselor. And I said, oh shit, how am I going to be a drug counselor if I'm alive? Just getting ready to graduate some program that I didn't really do, So I went back to the program, and I told on myself, while I was here, I was getting high, and so they had me do some assignments so I could earn my certificate. At that time, my roommate, she knew about Homeboys because she grew up around Father Greg. Some of us didn't know, I didn't. I was the one that was fortunate to know. And she's like, we're gonna go to this place. And I was like, and she takes me to Homeboy Industries. I walked in, I seen all the people, all the youngsters. I said, thank you, but no thank you. It was too much for me. So I left, had a few more experiences for a few weeks. My dad passed away, and I went back. And I did an interview, and I remember telling, they had asked me what did I believe was my strong point. And it was I think the first thing, now that I think about it, the first thing that I can identify today with who I am today, and the first sign of it then, I said, I have integrity. I was in a program and I was gonna graduate, and I went back and I told them that I was loaded. And I felt really good about that, and I shared that in my interview. And the next day they called me and they gave me the job. So I've been at Homeboy since 2011, June 10th. And it has been the most wonderful, beautiful experience of my life. I celebrated 8 years clean and sober on last Saturday. And I've been very fortunate to work with people who continuously helped me change my life. The first few years weren't perfect. When I turned 7 years, they told me I was going to have a spiritual year, and I believe I did. I've never heard God talk to me more than he does now. I believe that there's been blessings happening all my life, but I couldn't see. I think that we all have blessings, and we just need to notice them, But I work with, these people, and you're a beautiful young man. I was telling my dad, so that's what growing up with love and parents looks like. And we were talking about you, and I remember when you came, and he was only 15 years old, and it's such an honor to be able to see what true love and family looks like, And I used to feel sorry for myself for not having that, but I'm grateful because I have it now. you know, and I get to meet these people and be part of all of this stuff. And, you know, I wouldn't change anything because I do truly believe that, you know, we are the miracle workers of this world. You know, there's those that are here and they get the book smarts and all that, and that's great, you know. But we get the book smarts and we have the life experience too, you know. And I'm just so grateful. You know, I believe in my heart that I work for a greater purpose, and that purpose is God and my higher power. And my life is far from being perfect, and so am I. But I am so grateful for my life today. And it wouldn't have been this way if it wasn't for Father Greg Boyle, you know. He gave me my higher power back when he told me, when I asked him, am I going to go to hell for being gay? And he said, you are so perfect in God's image that God can't even look upon you. And I said, if he can believe that, who am I not to? My name is Emily. Thank you.